Spotify Wrapped hitting all of our Spotify's this past week, as well as all of our Instagram stories and our Twitter feeds. Dave, is Spotify Wrapped the best way to say we're tracking you that any company has thought of so far?
Oh, definitely, definitely. See, and that's the thing. Why I like it so much is they're tracking you either way. So at least make it fun. At least give me something more, you know. And I'll take it one step further because I'm so interested in this. I would pay more to have more data insights about myself. Now I know that's not most people, but I do
Whew.
find it quite interesting.
Dave just succumbing to the data mining entities that rule our social media driven world.
I don't have an Alexa in my home, so there's no always on microphone listening to everything I literally ever say. So I'm doing better than most.
That's true. I have two Alexas in my home and a Google Nest. It's very confusing. Um, yeah, Dave. I mean, before we get into just like the general takeaways from Spotify Wrapped, how did you feel about your Wrapped this year?
Good, good. I always find it very interesting because in the lead up to it, as December turns, you're always wondering like, what is it? Sometimes you might have a decent idea. I think for us too, I've definitely noticed this in past years. If I did like a discography catch up or re-listen in full, that kind of by default brings an artist into the top five for me
Hmm.
on the year. Um, didn't actually have that this year, but I remember in the past when we've done album rankings, it's just so obvious. But this year actually seemed quite genuine just on what I was listening to and what uh, I was digging. So it's always cool to see exactly what that was. I do enjoy that top songs playlist where you really get the full rundown of your top 50 or whatever it is.
Hmm.
That's always cool.
Yeah, this year, the two things you mentioned, like having an artist discography, totally ruin your top five. That happened this year for me with The Weekend. Go check out those rankings
Damn,
at
that was early in the year
YouTube.com.
too. You couldn't fix it, huh?
You know what else I noticed though is I'm a big listen to podcasts to go to sleep to guy. So that means that a lot of times I fall asleep and the podcasts keep playing. And
Hmm.
so my top podcast is not one of my favorite podcasts. It's just one that is fairly relaxing to listen to. So a little skewed in that sense. I think also getting married this year, we were doing a lot of listening to best wedding songs, which was great. Wedding songs are very enjoyable, but doesn't necessarily speak to my personal taste all the
Yeah,
time. So, not my favorite Spotify Wrapped this year. I'm kind of over Wrapped, if I'm going to be completely honest, but
interesting.
people love it.
What are your top genres this year?
Uh, it was pop, rock, rap. Then it was indie rock, and I forgot what the last one was. It was something
In
very generic.
Yeah, okay, that's funny. So for me, it was rap, pop, K-pop debut in top five for me,
Ooh,
UK hip hop, and then number five, Hollywood. What the fuck is Hollywood music, my guy? I have no idea.
just listening to I don't know, it's a Hollywood band. I don't even know. Father John
But
Misty on repeat.
what
Like
does
what?
that mean?
I don't
Like,
know. It's they have ridiculous stuff. I mean, this year they did the what was it? The your
listening
listening mood,
personalities,
yeah,
new
listening
thing.
personality. And mine was relaxing, calming morning, and then it was chill, relaxing afternoon, and then guess what my evening was? Relaxing heartbreak evening. And I was like, what are we talking about here? First of all, I'm just listening to chill music all the time. Just a chill
Mm.
guy.
My listening personality was the early adopter, which I actually think is pretty fitting. In terms of I'm always listening to new stuff, and it's like a volume game for me, both in terms of covering stuff on the pod, but also just listening to a lot of stuff we don't cover. So I was like, actually, that kind of tracks with how I use Spotify. I think the other thing for me too is I 60,000 minutes for music, 40 something for pods, but I also have my own music library, so a lot of my re-listening of older songs is not tracked via rap, so it's not the full dive on what I actually listen to, just of course in Spotify. What was your number one artist? What was your number one song?
Number one song was "Baby I'm Yours" by the Arctic Monkeys, which was my wedding song, my first dance. So, unsurprising, we
Okay.
listened to it a lot in order to practice the dance and whatnot.
Hmm.
But honestly, only listened to it according to Spotify 30 times. So that's my
Mhm.
number one song, 30 times. I guess I'm just not really listening to a lot of stuff. Number one artist was The Weeknd,
Right.
which
Oh, right. You said that. Yeah.
yeah, not my number one artist for the year. But what about
Uh,
you?
my number one artist was Drake, which is not surprising. He did release two new albums this year. And my number one song was Ladbroke Grove, the grime song by AJ Tracy, which I was super hyped to see at number one. I love that song. Number two, though, was a song I thought would be number one, which is Shut Down by Blackpink, because I'm just obsessed with that song. And Blackpink was my number two artist.
The Blackpink love is real. Dave, outside of our own personal Spotify wraps, which if you want to know more about our musical taste, just listen to the podcast. But what do you take away from some of the global trends and data that was put out there? Bad Bunny, number
Yep.
one most streamed artist in the world, followed by T Swift, Drake, The Weeknd because of this guy and BTS.
Yep.
But the US very similar. Just throw Kanye in there instead of Taylor, or not instead of Taylor, instead of BTS. Sorry,
hmm
but what else did you take away from it?
Yeah, I think if you look at the global charts, you look at the US charts, you look at male, female, mixed, whatever it is, I think the big takeaway, which has been kind of talked about already a lot this year, is that there's not really any new stars. You're seeing lots of people in the top five that didn't release new music this year. Olivia Rodrigo, top 10 female artist in the US this year. Doja Cat, same thing. You know, those albums are old, but those songs stuck around. It's a big thing about how playlisting works, about I think just how hard it is for new artists to break through. You had Juice World, top five male artists in the United States. The posthumous album was last summer. You
Mhm.
know, um, Morgan Wallen, that album was quite old, but that guy's just never leaving the chart. Stuff like that. Um, if you look at the songs, number one as it was, I think that was pretty predictable. But number two is Heat Waves,
Yeah,
Glass
what the fuck?
Animals, which I feel like I thought that had peaked last year. I was obviously wrong. Number three, Kid Leroy and Bieber, Stay. Same thing. Never mind. Then you
Doesn't
had
make any sense.
you had some Bunny songs. You had Cold Heart by Duo and Elton, apparently sticking around in earnest this year. Number 10 was Kate Bush, Running Up the Hill. That's cool to see given the phenomenon that was, of course. Um, yeah, I think that's my big takeaway is that a ton of artists were able to dominate without new drops, especially on the female side. Doja, Billie, Ariana, Rihanna, Nicki, SZA, Olivia. Like, you know,
Mhm.
the people of yesterday are still here today, still killing it. New music be damned. So whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing, I do think it is not the best that there was like no like true like top tier breakout. It just feels like there's not enough room for it right now with the way these trends are shaking out. So it'd be interesting to see how that continues in the years to come.
Yeah, it's really perplexing in a sense because um while I think as you laid out, it makes sense that we would see this. And on the other hand, like you would think someone like Blackpink, who is just so big and on the rise, put out an album this year, that you would see them like taking on some of these female artists like spaces. Now they're in the top five K-pop, obviously, but
Yeah.
I expected to see them a little bit higher on some of these things, right?
So I looked at the K-pop data too, and what was quite interesting to me, globally, number one BTS, number two Blackpink, no surprise there. However, in the United States, Twice was ahead of Blackpink. I would have never guessed that.
Wow, huh? That's fascinating. Uh, I guess I did anecdotally did hear that their tour at MSG was very rowdy.
Yeah,
So maybe that makes more sense than I give it credit
right.
for. Just like other like random stuff. So some of the things shared were like songs with the most shared lyrics globally. So people sending lyrics back and forth to each other.
Mhm.
Uh like old songs. Heat Waves was number one. But then you have a song by Conan Gray called Heather, and then you had the rounding out the top five was "Summertime Sadness" by Lana Del Rey and "Somewhere Only We Know" by Keen. Like, what? Or why are people sharing these lyrics? Like, I need to know more about why this is
Huh.
happening.
I can't say I've ever shared lyrics with Spotify anyway. So
Me neither, but apparently people are doing it.
you
You
really,
know,
you really had to share Heat Waves lyrics. You can just like type that one out.
Heat waves keep freaking me out. I mean, you know. If you know, you know.
It was all the British people when they had the crazy heat in Europe. They
Yeah,
were just like, "Fuck, I don't have air conditioning here. Let me send you this song."
yeah. The Spotify streaming was actually what's causing the energy crisis over there. So little did
Oh
we know.
gosh.
Um, some of the most popular podcasts, Dave. Joe Rogan. Thoughts on that?
No surprise.
Yeah.
He's at the top. Usually makes sense.
Call her daddy with their Gluck Gluck. Was it Gluck Gluck
9,000.
3000,
Yeah.
9000? Coming
Um,
at number two, both globally and domestic.
Now that
Then
is impressive.
Crime Junkie rounding out in the both top fives. And then in the US, The Daily and Armchair Expert with Dak Shepard. Dave, why aren't we in this top five?
The Dax Shepard one is perplexing to me.
Yeah, he gets huge guests. He just had Jordan Peele on like last week,
Sure.
and I think Spotify pushes it because I think he's technically part of the
Right.
company.
I think that's the takeaway with Call Her Daddy. Spotify
Yeah.
acquires that podcast
Hmm.
and serves it up,
Yep.
you know, and that's good because they spend a lot of money on it. So you might as well get your return. So I guess it does make sense.
Absolutely. Any other takeaways?
Um, I mean, there's tons of data to look at, but yeah, I think overall, just the lack of new stars is I think the most evident thing to me. But overall, I enjoy this kind of like data review. I find it enjoyable, both personally and this more macroly to analyze stuff. So I'm here for it.
Dave is a confirmed stats guy, so uh, you drop him all of your Spotify stats, tell him how many minutes you listened, what your mood and personalities are,